Hey ladies, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Amanda, thanks for having us back.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
It is.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you back on the show. And, before we were here in Nashville, we were getting kind of the rumors of, it would be really great if y'all have the opportunity to stay home. And we're like, oh yeah, whatever. And, we've still been doing things and going shopping and doing all that. And we got the official lockdown, not lockdown, but stay home order last Wednesday. And then Monday, the governor finally ordered, all right, if you are a non-essential business, you are now officially closed until April 30th.
Wow.
So we're just here. I feel like we're just really starting to get into this, but I know a lot of people have already been in it. I know the other areas and other states have already been in quarantine for a good 2 weeks or so. Schools have been closed. So, back in December when we did our show, we were talking about how we were going to be at home and things were going to be really focused on the home. And I think a lot of people listened to that show and they were like, oh, sure, we're going to be at home. And I don't think they really realized.
Yeah, I don't think any of us really realized that we were going to be at home in this way. But, from what if I remember correctly, what we were talking about is the North Node transiting through Cancer. And this, and it's kind of on its way out. The North Node's getting ready to change into Gemini in May. But as it's finishing its 18-month cycle in Cancer, it's really wanting to make sure that we all learn the lessons of the highest octaves of Cancer, which is being at home, protecting your family, protecting your nest, and also appreciating. I've actually heard from some of my male clients them being home and saying, I had no idea what my wife does every day. So it's like we're having respect for the mother, we're having respect for the earth, we're having respect for our spaces now more than ever. So this, I think that this is North Node in Cancer is kind of like cheering. It's saying, yes, this is what I wanted you all to get.
Which is pretty much what I've been saying for 10 years.
Right? Cancer.
No, being a Feng Shui expert.
Yeah.
No, but a Cancer too.
Yes.
We focus so much on the home and we talk about the energetics of the home and how chi is so important. And it's like, I think people have been so severely distracted by technology and their to-do list and the busy and being outside of the home that I feel like a lot of the information we were saying, people were like, oh yeah, that's important, but it was kind of falling on deaf ears. And now I think people are like, wow, there's something to this. Like, I don't feel comfortable at home. I'm not, this is uncomfortable. And I'm, a lot of people are using the words cabin fever. And I had one lady say to me the other day, I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. I just want to leave. And it's like, but why? Why do you feel that way? Why are you so uncomfortable at home? So I'm curious, what have you guys been doing that's, you're stuck at home and you're both enlightened beings. What have you been doing at home that's been working for you to, work with the energy rather than against it?
Yeah, great question.
Getting out. Okay. No, it's enjoying nature, honestly. I mean, in LA, so we have have usually nice weather, which has been really great and fortunate. But there has been rainy days as well. And so, yeah, it does take some creativity of number one, creating a space, if you haven't already, that really fits your function, the function that you need it to function, whether it's a home office or a creative space or a yoga space or a meditation space or whatever the case is. So really stretching people's imagination of what their space can be and what it needs to be to fill the needs that are now everything is at home. And so making do with a certain, whether it was a guest bedroom that maybe needs to be an office now, or a living room that needs to also become a yoga space, or whatever the case is. So really getting creative and learning to work together within a family unit, whether it's a couple or a family, and really, I think we'll see what Rachel will say about Venus and relationships now and coming up, but really putting a big spotlight on relationships. So it's really it really is stretching all of our Cancerian tendencies of appreciating home and family and mothering. So yeah.
Mm.
I think too, one of the things that I kept saying, I got into real estate at the end of last year, and the one thing that was making me really uncomfortable, and I could feel my inner fire, starting to be abrasive about the size that homes had gotten. And like here in Nashville, all of the new builds that are going up are average 6,000 square feet.
Wow.
That is too much damn house. From an environmental standpoint, I'm like, okay, two people do not need to be living in 6,000 square feet. So I think too, this is allowing people to really realize how much house they really need and probably how much space they haven't been using. They may be utilizing it now, but it's also forcing them, like you said, Tisha, to look at it and say, okay, maybe this could be an office area, or maybe this could be a yoga area, and instead of a guest room that gets used once a year. Mm-hmm. Maybe it becomes a space that gets used all the time, and then lo and behold, you don't need 6,000 square feet. You could probably get by with 2,000 square feet. You just need to learn how to use it better.
Right. I think commercial spaces are about to have those realizations as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think what's going to be really great about this is, and we talked about this in the show in December, is we were talking about how technology was really going to take front and center, and we were going to start using technology in new ways. And we didn't know exactly what that looked like. We didn't know exactly, what that really was going to mean for us. And now, I've been doing tons of stuff on Zoom, and it's like, everybody is utilizing Zoom. Everybody's on Facebook Live. Everybody's connecting in new ways and doing business in a new way. And so, I think it's showing people that you can do a lot from your home space. And I don't think people were realizing that. So I think that's going to be really evolutionary for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give some astrological context for that, this year, actually on the 20, just a couple days ago, a couple weeks ago, Saturn moved into the sign of Aquarius. Wherever Saturn is, that's where we're buckling down. We're getting focused. We're having to make new commitments. We're getting serious. And Aquarius is the sign that relates to technology, and it also relates to community. And so I think one of the positives that's going to come out of the coronavirus is the ways in which we're able to expand our concept of community and how we interact with one another. So we'll see technological advances continue throughout the next 2.5 years. Just to give a little bit of context for Saturn and Aquarius, last time Saturn was in Aquarius, we saw the internet going into every one of our homes. And so we had email for the first time. AOL, Prodigy, we had chat rooms. And
oh my God, I remember those.
right? Yeah. So all of these things were starting right around that time. And so now we're going to see a whole new wave of that with different groups. Like I'm noticing more Facebook group activity, and more people active, because this is how we are able to bond with one another. This is how we're able to get together. My family just before this call had a Zoom birthday party. Oh. So I think that this is one of the real positives that's going to come out of this time, is just the way that we're engaging, and also being at home helps us to really value those connections that we have, and I think that we'll be able to weed out and be more discerning about how we spend our time on the other side of this, knowing that we can go for weeks without any outside of the home social activities. Then how do we make decisions on the other side of this about what social activities really add value and enhance our lives versus which ones drain us? And so Saturn can help us get really focused about what kind of social things we're doing.
I think that's really valuable. I think that, I'm an introvert, so I'm fine at home, and I've got extrovert friends that are freaking out. But I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said that this is just going to really, I feel like it's a we're trimming the fat, we're trimming what no longer serves us, and we're really getting clear about the things that bring us the most joy and the things that we like to do. And lo and behold, we can do those things at home. And I think that it's going to really make us, just before all this really happened, I was busier than I've ever been in my life. Like I was working 6-7 days a week, anywhere from 12 to 15-hour days. I was collapsing at the end of the day because I was so exhausted. And I feel like I went from 100 miles an hour to 10. And I was looking at my calendar because we just got the official notice from the governor that, if you have no reason to go out, stay home. And so my calendar went from having like 17 things a day to it's wide open. And I'm like, wow, this feels really good. Like I actually feel like I can breathe. And I'm like, I'm waking up going, what do I want to do today? What a concept, rather than, oh my God, okay, I've got to try to squeeze this in and do this. And if I'm here, then I can try to, grab this while I'm out, and like just the frenzy. And here I teach this and tell other people not to do it, and I'm doing it.
I think you just told exactly the collective story. And then we, as a collective, anytime you run yourself, to the ground, you get sick, right? And like that's what's happened to us as a collective. We have run ourselves into the ground and gotten sick, and we've all like got a note from the doctor: stay home, get well, reboot, right? Recuperate, reprioritize how you're running your energy, and then we'll have a fresh start.
Well, and I think what's really great is, for me personally, just the lack of guilt. Like, this morning, I've been really trying to stick to a routine where I'm still waking up at the same time, and I'm structuring my day to an extent just so that I have a little bit of routine in place. So I'm not completely loosey-goosey and like, watching Netflix all day. And like this morning, I overslept by like 10 minutes, and I was like, oh my God, I've overslept. And I'm like, I have no place to go. So there was a little bit of that moment where I was like, it's totally okay, so it has relinquished me from that sense of responsibility. And it's really a great feeling. Tisha and I were talking before the show about how I've really been able to get into all the projects that I really want to be doing and love to be doing, but they aren't necessarily the things that bring in financial stability. So they tend to get pushed to the back burner. Whether it's doing this podcast, the YouTube channel, it's all the auxiliary things that make my business and brand the business, but it's auxiliary and it doesn't bring in, direct income. So it's the writing, the YouTube channel, the podcast, all the creative stuff that I really do enjoy doing. But, when I'm frantic and trying to make rent, I'm like, I can't do those things. I need to go do this thing. And so I feel like that has been kind of let go as well. And so there's been this enormous surrender. And I think a lot of people they're being forced to do this, but it's this idea of, oh, well, I thought that by now we were going to be back to normal, and I guess I'm going to have to lean into this because we're going to be doing this for another 30 days. Mm-hmm. So what does the energy look like as far as the next 30 days? We're now in April. So what does April look like? And you were talking about this North Node going into Gemini. So does that mean we get out of our homes, or what's next?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Gel card.
Yeah. So, well, I think, April's got a mix of things, astrologically speaking. First of all, I think we're going to reach kind of a climax with the pandemic around between the 8th and the 20th, but right around the 14th and 15th. And that's going to coincide with the sun squaring Jupiter and the sun squaring Pluto. And I'll explain. I know most of your listeners are very woo. But for those who don't know much astrology, I'll kind of explain what that means. So some of the big transits that we were talking about that are representative of the societal changes that we're going through, the big stuff, the shake-up transits that happened in January that we talked about on your show, then those are in cardinal signs. So cardinal signs are signs that want to take action. They're like initiating signs. So any time the sun this year is in a cardinal sign, it's going to reflect back on that same point in January 12th. And for many people, January was a hard month. This is why, because that signified a big shift, societally speaking. So the sun is going to reflect back on that point on Jupiter and on Pluto on the 14th and 15th, and kind of stir things up and stir up some of the intensity and some of the big stuff that's happening for us in the world. Then after that, I kind of like to think that that's the climax, and then we'll start to sort of taper off, and energetically things will open up for us at the end of April, especially around the 26th. And that's a day when the sun is going to meet up with Uranus. And this is a transit that I like to think of as like a lightning bolt transit, where it's like you get that flash of inspiration, where some of the creative ideas that you're talking about, Amanda, are ones that everyone is going to have access to. It's kind of like you get out of your own way. So overcoming any emotional hurdles, really kind of letting fears just pass you by. I know it's hard to do if you're not working, or if you're in a situation where you're suddenly painfully aware of the flaws of your relationship or the lack thereof, or if you are stuck inside having to really focus more on yourself. There's a lot of realizations that are coming up in the beginning of the month. But by the end of the month, you can create solutions. So, and that's when I think a lot of our restrictions will start to lift. And I think we'll start to see that we're beginning to come out of this.
Which is a positive note. Now, you're talking about Pluto, which is typically, death and rebirth. And I mean, it's a lot of people want to disregard it or have disregarded it, but it's actually, it's a pretty important planet, and Jupiter tends to be quite expansive. So when we hit that pinnacle point of the 15th, what does that really mean? You're saying that's the peak, but when you've got expansion and you've got this little guy over here that's all about renewal and death and rebirth and that sort of thing, that to me says, wow, that's some pretty big transformation occurring.
Yeah, there's going to be, it's a punctuation mark on the transformation that's already been going on. When Jupiter and Pluto come together, and this is actually, they're going to be, I didn't mention this, but one of the most significant transits of the year is Jupiter and Pluto coming together on April 4th. So just in a few days from now. And when these two planets come together, Pluto transforms anything that it comes into contact with. And for Jupiter, those are things like higher education, faith, religion, beliefs, also travel. These are some of law. These are some of Jupiter's themes. And whenever Jupiter comes into contact with or conjunction with a planet, it expands and magnifies the potential of that planet. So, this is going to be one of those transits. The last time these two planets came together in Capricorn was in 2007. And and that was right before the mortgage crisis.
Yeah.
And what happened was we shone a big spotlight on the corruption in those industries. And from there, we, kind of tore things down, got back to the basics, created some regulations, and started rebuilding. And so in many ways, I think that there's a lot of hope with this transit of what we are going to rebuild after we come out of this time. But, financially, Pluto rules debt. So for people who are having to go into debt during this time, there could be some solutions created for how to move beyond that. Or there might actually have to be new regulations or new legislation allowing people to have more of a grace period coming coming on the heels of this. So I think that there's, there's a lot of hope for this, but it's probably going to evolve throughout this year, because this transit is going to happen 2 more times.
Right. So, but I think what's really powerful about this year is the back to back retrogrades and transits and eclipses and all of the energy. I almost feel like, we've been kind of placed in a box and the earth is going like this to us.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways it's really good. And Tisha, I want to ask you about this because you're, a big environmentalist, and I know that you've been talking about the environment for a very, very long time. And, so many beautiful things have come out of this. I've heard that LA is, lowering its smog. I've heard India has lowered its smog. I've heard dolphins are in the channels of Venice. Like, I've heard all of these beautiful things. And I was just watching this adorable video. I can't remember what city it was. It was over in the UK, but because everybody's on lockdown, all of these animals like sheep and rams and all of these things that have been up in the hills for like a very long time, 200 or 300 years, they're coming down the hillside because everything is so quiet. And, I think that this is, to me, that brings me a lot of hope for environmentalism and sustainability. And I'm hoping that people being locked up in their homes and looking out their windows going, wow, it's so much prettier outside. And maybe longing, realizing because they're cooped up inside, longing for the days that they can be outside and almost rekindling a love affair with nature, which they've lost. So what are you experiencing as far as, the things that you've been reading about and the things that you've seen? Because I know you've been, like me, you've been preaching to people about environmentalism and taking care of our earth. And, kind of like Feng Shui, I sometimes feel like people are, it goes in one ear and out the other. What have you felt about this experience where, hopefully people are waking up to the environment?
Yeah, and just if you think about just the energy of appreciation and how strong and potent that is, anytime you put your attention on anything, where your attention goes, energy flows. And so just our attention on nature and appreciation is going to make it look that much sparkly, even regardless. But yeah, I look at nature through the lens of Taoism, which is the, foundation of yin and yang and the 5 element cycle, and can see that we were completely out of balance with the yang energy in our planet. And so we just got whacked down and now all forced into experiencing yin, and which is the more feminine energy, and slowing down, appreciation, creativity, not the hustle and bustle that we have been under siege of. So we're getting back into the flow of which is Tao, which is the Tao flow.
Away.
And it's like, Mother Nature or Mother Earth is gonna find a way to come back into balance, and she certainly has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, she's put us in that box and she's shaking us up like, look what you've done. But I think it's glorious. Like, I go out, I've got all these amazing trails by my house, and I would go on walks and people would be like this on their phones and they weren't really appreciating nature. And I feel like now when I'm going out and I'm walking, I feel like people are looking and appreciating the trees, and they're looking at the ground and the blooms, and they've always been trying to capture it on their phone, and they're not really present. They're enjoying the moment through the lens of a phone as opposed to really being present and enjoying it. And I think that because they've been stuck inside, they're realizing the longing of, the beauty of nature and how it makes us feel.
Yeah.
So that to me is a rebirth, like a death and a rebirth. Like, wow, our old ways really weren't serving us. Look at this amazing, tree and trails and all of these beautiful things that, we've been taking for granted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also just like strangers, like if you pass on, like, because we haven't really, as far as actual people in flesh, like Rachel's probably one of the few people that have, it's like, so you see like a stranger, it's like, oh my God, hey.
Yeah.
Another person.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Tennessee still hasn't gotten that message. Like, I went out the other day to go pick up a prescription, and pretty much the roadways and like everywhere looks like normal. Like, there was a line of like 17 people at Starbucks, and like there's still traffic, and like they're not getting the message of, stay home, which I think is why the governor finally stepped in and said, all right, if you do a non-essential business, stay home, because people were not listening. So, and that's been part of the problem. But I know that we are heading into, we've got a lot of things going on in April. So we're going to still continue to be uncomfortable, and we're still probably going to experience some things that we don't like. But then we go into May, which is yet another retrograde. And what I resonate pretty closely with Venus. I've got a lot of strong Venus in my own chart. I love beautiful things. I love luxury. And every time I go through a Venus retrograde, I feel like it shakes up my lifestyle. So, and I also know that it's closely related to relationships. So I think in a lot of ways it can be a beautiful thing, because it can, again, eliminate things that no longer serve us. But what is this retrograde about? Like, what are some themes that we can expect?
Yeah, great question. Well, so the retrograde, it's going to be from May 12th to June 24th, and that's the timing that we're looking at. This retrograde, Venus is not just relationships and love, it's also money and finances. And so I think that during the Venus retrograde, one of the things that will be up is sort of the question of, how are we bouncing back financially, especially for people who've had to take time off work, or who had financial struggles as a result of the social isolation and closing businesses and things like that. I think it could be a time of really scaling back. So it's kind of a time when we're going to be more conservative in terms of our spending, and also in terms of our social time and social activities, more conscious about what we're doing and who we're doing it with. In relationships, this is going to be kind of like one of those challenging parts of the year in terms of relationships, and especially for people who have been stuck at home in marriages where there are unhealthy dynamics, or you have the painful realization of, like, this isn't working anymore, or relationships where there's been like an affair, or there's been extramarital activity, and having to look at that dynamic and make some decisions about how you want to proceed. You're not going to be able to ignore problems that you might have been able to ignore before. So this, we could see some breakups, we could see some makeups, we could see some new beginnings in relationships when those single people are like, I'm ready for love. After being alone, like that urge to connect is going to be so strong. So we'll see a lot of relationship back and forth, a lot of relationship changes at that time. So financially, definitely, it's going to be a big theme. And also relationship status updates is going to be another big thing.
So Tisha, let me ask you, what are some of your favorite things that we can do at home? Just knowing, like Rachel was saying, if you've got a partner and he or she is driving you up the wall, your kids are driving you up the wall, you've got cabin fever, you just want to get outside. But then you've got this energy that comes in that, like Rachel said, is really exposing the truths about, we can no longer deny. The denial is getting exposed. What are some things that we can do at home to bring in some of those comforts and, make those times a little bit less challenging and make life a little bit more comfortable while we ride this out?
Wear a big mirror. And that way they're always reflected when they look at you. I think we're learning that now, I think with being at home so much and having to create boundaries within our home. and also loosening boundaries within the home, really finding where we end and the other begins. And, within our home, what that is walls. Walls are boundaries. And I think people are there may be a pullback on the open floor plan after this is over. It may not be all it's been cracked up to be.
Right.
Floor plans, they trend with, they evolve with the times. They're like just our minds and the collective. And so I think people are finding a new reason to have walls that they didn't before. And then also, having to open doors as well. And now with the kids at home and having to kind of, every day is a kid comes to work with you day, and having that experience as well. And so I think boundaries is really up for folks. And I think that's in real time and really figuring out what can work for each situation.
I would add to that too, you teach a lot about clutter and how important our psyche is in conjunction to clutter. And I think that this is also going to help in a lot of ways, just like we saw in 2008, how we have too much shit. And, the more shit we have, the more weighed down we feel, the more chaotic and anxious we feel. So I think we're going to see a purging period as well, where, people are stuck at home. I've been telling people, clean out your pantries and get them organized, clean out your garage, get it organized. Like, this is a great time to get your life in order so that you feel like you're in control. And you teach a lot about that. What are some of your thoughts about, just getting clutter and in order so that you feel like you're in order?
Right. I mean, I've been one of the main messages I've been kind of preaching for like the last 5 years is that your home is the only space on the planet that you have any control over. And is that ever more true than right now?
Yeah, right.
I mean, not only the only space you have control over, but the only space you can even be in. So really, I think people are really connecting the dots between the mind, body, and home, and how the home, how you feel is going to be determined by how your home feels, and understanding how that connection is so interrelated. So I think the not only appreciation, but maybe our relationship with our home is very similar to our relationship with in relationships with other. What is your relationship with your home? Is it harmonious? Is it challenging? And I think people are having to look at that in a new way than they've ever had to before. But as far as, absolutely great time for decluttering, because, most people have a lack of square footage as opposed to too much. I mean, too much is definitely an issue for sure. But having too little is probably coming up for folks now, since having to do a lot more functions at home. And so one of the best ways to create more square footage is to get rid of stuff. And so decluttering definitely is in order now. And you have time, most likely, at least you have probably more time now that most people don't commute now. So there's probably at least another extra hour. I think a lot of people are seeing that the excuses they've used in the past are really just excuses, and it's not really about time.
Right.
So other things, if you think listeners might be interested, hitting on ways we can improve our health in our home, like, because I know obviously the virus is still up and still obviously very contagious, and so how we can boost our health in our home, and understanding the connection there as well.
Well, and I think that's one of the great things about your book, Mind, Body, Home, is, I think that people fail to realize the reflection that you're talking about, how, I'm really surprised sometimes when I go into homes and how people treat them, as if it's just this box that they sleep in at night and it stores some food for them, and, they pay a couple of bills, but other than that, it's nothing more. And it's like, how indicative the home is in relation to your own chi and your own body, and how literally everything from an energetic standpoint means something. Your plumbing means something, your electrical means something, your HVAC means something. And I think that that's what's really great about your book, is it really pinpoints, you know, if you're having issues here, it means this. If you're having an issue over here, it means this. And so I think that just like what we were talking about with nature, I think that we can also rekindle that love affair with home and the idea of what home is to people, because I think they have lost that connection because they've been too busy in thinking, you know, everything I need is external. And I think that it's just that we've been so frenetic and we haven't wanted to work on ourselves and work on our own energy. You know, whatever the stuff is that we've been shoving down, it's like now all of a sudden it's like, oh God, I got to deal with that now. But it shows up in our systems, you know, in the systems of your home. And it, you know, I had a girlfriend last year, her oven broke, her HVAC broke, the tree in the front yard fell, and then the plumbing completely flooded her house. And she's like, I hate this house. And I'm like, stop saying that. The house is literally speaking to you and you're not listening. And she's like, you are so weird.
Yeah, whatever you're saying about your home, you're actually saying about yourself.
Right.
So,
which is, you know, a lot of people don't think like that. And they don't realize that these systems are a direct reflection of what's showing up for them. So I'm curious, Rachel, I know during Mercury retrogrades, we can often see things break. What are some of the themes of Venus? Do we have to worry about anything breaking other than relationships?
Your heartbreaking.
Your bank account.
Yeah. You know, during Venus retrograde, you know, it's not, because Mercury is more communication devices, some of our technology. With Venus, it tends to be more personal. It's more heart-centered. So self-worth issues, you know, abandonment wounds, like those kinds of things show up for us in Venus retrograde. I will say, though, one of the things that can happen is as you're going through Venus retrograde, you get inspired to make changes to your appearance. Don't do it. Just wait. Because what happens is you're going through a personal renaissance. Who do I want to be in the world? You're asking the world to pay more attention to you as a part of developing self-worth and in increasing your own sense of your beauty and your presence in the world. And often, if there is a relationship breakup, then the first thing you want to do is go out and get a haircut and, you know, new clothes. After you're done eating the ice cream, you go out and you get a new wardrobe and you're like, I'm going to change who I am, who I present myself to be in the world. And you crave like establishing a new identity. But I would say that you're not always, you're inclined to make bolder choices during Venus retrograde. In terms of your style, in terms of your hair, in terms of your clothes, in terms of how you present. But after the retrograde period, when things come back into balance, you might look back and have some regrets. So that's not a great time to get cosmetic surgery or to get a tattoo or anything that radically changes your appearance. Wait until the end of the summer.
Give the dates again for that.
Yes. Okay. So it's May 12th. To June 24th.
And it's going to be retroing in Gemini? Or?
Yes, yeah, Gemini, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So isn't Gemini also a little bit of communication and
It is. But it's less about, like, with Mercury retrograde, there tend to be communication issues if you're holding something back or if you're not communicating clearly. With Venus retrograde in Gemini, it's going to be less about communication itself and more about, like, are you speaking from the heart? Or are you being authentic in communication? So it's more, Venus is more heart-centered, Mercury is more head-centered.
Good time to read the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Review.
yeah. Well, it sounds like we're going to go through a great renewal period because we've got this transit occurring with Jupiter and Pluto, which is, you know, it sounds like unearth maybe a big transformation or something is going to be, you know, exposed to us. So we're going to get rid of something, but something new is going to come in, and it gives us a great opportunity for our career. But, you know, being able to go into this time frame where it gives us an opportunity to get rid of what is really not serving us from our heart, and what's not really giving us great joy or pleasure, it's like we can come up with the big bang theory, so to speak, in April and come up with the big idea that's going to be really great, and then really go into May with, okay, I need to get rid of all the shit that's not serving me so that I can do this thing that's going to really make my heart sing.
Yeah. I think that's so beautifully put, Amanda. I think that's, I can see that being the storyline that leads us into the summer.
Because, yeah, I mean, Venus is all about our values, what we value. And I think this time of being home is really, I guess it's time to really think about what we value, or reprioritize what we value. I know it has for me. And I you know, it's like I realize how much of going out into the world. I mean, I work from home, but it's easy to not want to work from home. And so, like, you know, or even going out for dinner or whatever, like how much distractions that we create from going out. And there's obviously wonderful things about going out, but it can be used to the point of distraction. And so I think us all coming back within our four walls and roof is really, we're really seeing what we do value and really reprioritizing things. So as you said, I think when when the gates open back up, we're going to really have a different value system of what's important to us.
I agree. I think it's going to be a really great period for us to, we're kind of going through the grief period right now, and we're mourning, you know, the fact that, you know, like the other day, it was an event to go to the grocery store. Like it was an event, you know, like it's no longer the days where you just hop in your car, run to the store, grab milk and come home. Like it was an event. And, you know, I think there's a little bit of a grieving period there where it's like, oh God, you know, this is so much efforting, and, you know, you kind of have to lean into that. But I think the glorious part of this is it's really going to force us to get our priorities straight. We are going to let go of all the stuff that doesn't serve us. And I think a lot of us, you know, I see it in my own practice with my Feng Shui clients, is that a lot of people are not working and operating from a place of joy. They're working from a place of expectation. They want to, you know, be what is expected of them, and they want to do and perform in a way, but it's not really coming from where they want to do. So I feel like this is a great opportunity for people to, you know, kind of shed through their chrysalis and emerge as the butterfly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yes. And, you know, Venus is the planet of pleasure. And when Venus
Even better.
Yeah, exactly. When Venus is retrograde, we can feel like we're not having any fun. But if you are doing things intentionally to bring pleasure into your life, pleasure is a spiritual ideal. We are wired toward the good, toward what brings us, makes us feel alive, toward pleasure. And that actually supports our spiritual growth and spiritual development. And I think we have a lot of like these old messages about how hard work and struggle are really the spiritual ideals, but they're not. Like Venus is actually a spiritual ideal. So I think the more we can go into this period with that mindset and finding pleasure not from the things that we're buying or the successes that we're achieving, but from the beauty in the earth, from the gentleness of this time that we have in our own spaces, from the surprises in our relationships and our connections. If we can find pleasure from those things, then we readjust our priorities. Then some of the financial shifts that are happening within the world, within the economy, won't feel so bad.
Well, I think it's a great point, because we have been led to believe and really conditioned that our world is so left brain analytical. We can push through, we can power through, we have to strive. And it's, at the end of the day, it's all about achievement. You know, you're nothing if you don't achieve. And I feel like Tisha, what you were talking about, we've been far too yang for far too long, and we've been completely out of balance. And I feel like, you know, we do need to have this spiritual awakening of sorts so that we do have a balance between the masculine and the feminine. And it's been far too masculine for far too long. And to have this sort of push to see pleasure in things that are free and that aren't, you know, consuming and harming our planet. I think that as uncomfortable and scary as it can be, I know a lot of people are severely uncomfortable right now, but I think that when we emerge from this, we're going to look back and go, oh my God, how do we ever live that way? So, and we talked about that last fall when we were talking about, this December, we're going to look back at January and go, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to look back at this year and previous years, and we're going to realize that, we've been doing this wrong. So I think that this is going to be a great thing. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on the show today. And I think that I'm hoping that a lot of people glean hope from this. And thank you for, I said at the top of the show, I wanted to shoot the shit with you and talk about where we are, after where we were in December. But, if people want to connect with you, if they want to find you, I know, Tisha, we were talking about your book, Mind, Body, Home. Where can people find you and what do y'all got going on? I love the new cover, by the way.
Release of my book, Mind, Body, Home, just in time for folks who want to get in touch with their inner home. It just came out like today. Amazon is where the best place to buy it. TishaMorris.com is where all my stuff is. I'm just starting a new business called the Publishing Portal. And in fact, this book was published through the Publishing Portal, which is my publishing, self-publishing arm. So for all those writers, creatives that are now like really motivated to write their book and get their message out, and you want to self-publish, thepublishingportal.com is where to go for that. And I'm starting writing groups and virtual writing retreats. So just in time for the North Node Gemini and all of the writing juju that we're going to be having.
Yeah. And Rachel?
Well, you can find me at rachellangastrologer.com. And there you can read articles that I have written, including one about the coronavirus and the astrology of it. And I regularly teach classes. I've got a class coming up in May. That's an advanced astrology class for anyone who wants to learn about transits. And I've got a webinar on May 1st I'm pretty excited about the North and South nodes, so that you can learn these very important destiny points in your own chart, and also learn about the transiting node and what it's going to mean for us. The transiting North node moving into Gemini. And it's a free webinar, so you can go to my website, sign up, and then I also host monthly meditation groups live in person in LA, and also through Zoom. And we do rituals, intention setting rituals. We talk about the astrology of the new lunar cycle, and it's a great group of people. We all really contribute our own intentions so that we support one another in the manifestation of them.
And what was your website?
rachellangastrologer.com.
I'll put that in the show notes as well, but I wasn't sure if you mentioned that. Maybe you did. I don't know. I'm getting tired. Thank you, ladies, for coming back on. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda.